get all horny. Here we go. That recorded. Okay, what's up? It is Pete from the Lasser Cast in his daughter's bedroom, ready to talk about some vampire sex. There's Danny, Dr. ZSGOD. Oh, God. Danny Torkel, he's drinking an energy drink. It's been a long day, my friend.
What's going on? Yeah. This is a sparkling ice with caffeine and zero sugar. So
nice.
Just another gleeful attempt at sponsorship.
Oh, yeah, we'll get that. I want to tell you some bullshit. Facebook just changed their criteria for posting on Facebook Live. Apparently, your page has to have 100 followers now to post live on there. And that just makes me sad because my PR Marsh author page does not have 100 followers.
Well, if some of our viewers who watch these interview with the vampire videos go over to Facebook, like the PR Marsh authors channel, and then Pete will be happy. And yeah, I am. I'm still kind of reeling from this last episode.
Yes.
I was so out of it last night that I legit paused it and I finished it this morning.
Okay.
I think we need to start though with the AMC network because you tweeted something to me and your wife and I laughed so hard. Basically, and we brought this point up for a few weeks. AMC love Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
They're a network that, has produced some fine quality television.
Yeah.
They are dog shit at transitioning into commercial breaks and out of commercial breaks.
Oh, yeah.
Usually you get like a music stinger or a fade to black or something to clue you in that a commercial is coming.
Yes.
With this show, it literally will be like, and then Pete, and then BK Whoppers, Double Whopper. And I'm like, wait, no. And it is jarring to the point where it's become comical. And
yes.
like I almost don't want to like I'm usually so trained when I watch something on DVR to be like, all right, here come the commercials, boom. And now I just sit there like, all right, what is the most intense moment that is going to get cut off for a ridiculously poorly timed commercial break?
Yes. It's fucking nuts. It's fucking nuts. And last night's episode, that was an experience. It was just wild, man, because there was some crazy shit going down on this show, and then it would just hop over to a commercial, like after someone just had a revelation about their own life. I mean, the show, I think multiple times there's disclaimers talking about suicide. And if people are affected by suicide, contact this phone number, right? And so it's this very serious subject matter, but when we're talking about suicide on Interview with the Vampire, we're essentially talking about a vampire walking into the sun, right? And that in itself is like a weird thing to handle because they're treating the idea of suicide very seriously, but then it is like this mythical thing where he's walking into the sun. It's not a person shooting themselves, hanging themselves, anything else. It's a mythical creature killing themselves. And so I thought that was bizarre, kind of, but then to like go from a person almost killing themselves to like a beat and then a Burger King commercial, it's just like too much, It was a roller coaster.
They need to just get somebody to like artificially impose a like 1.5 second fade to black.
Yeah. There's
or
nothing
like
like
just
that.
Steal the Law and Order. Dun dun.
Yeah.
And then
dun,
like,
dun.
okay, we're going to commercial.
Right.
Because it's jarring and it kind of like takes you out of the episode for a minute. And like you said, this season's been incredible. The whole series has been incredible, but this episode in particular is so heavy.
Yep.
With discoveries about the past and things about these characters and the relationships between these characters.
Yes.
Secrets getting revealed, suicidal thoughts and imagery. And you don't want that emotion, that tension being sapped away because of bizarre, there isn't even an edit. It feels like it's just blends into these commercials, and the commercials always are like with a theme song, and like the Burger King one that you sent me in a you actually sent me that before I had watched the episode.
Oh,
and so
okay.
I was like waiting for it the whole time, and I was just like, oh no.
You saying that, it kind of makes me think this season might actually be better than last season. I'm really digging it. I said this last time around that, like, I didn't know how I would feel about Armand, but I really love the dynamic of this season. And this is what we expected for today. We expected that it was mainly going to be set in 1976 or 73. I'm sorry. And it was, but we did have some great moments with Louis and Daniel in the present too. It was such a phenomenal episode. And there's one part that was like truly sad, to where I felt very, very sad. And one point I want to make is that the funny thing about Interview with the Vampire is that we're really watching it because of like the romance and the drama, but yet they are like slaughtering thousands of people.
Daniel makes a point where he says something like 500 years and probably 100,000 deaths.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to put it into my head, like, how many people have they killed?
Yeah.
And you think about the moment a few episodes ago where they first meet the vampire troupe at the theater, and they go on like that nighttime visit, and they go to like a mansion that's having a party with probably 30-40 guests, and they kill everybody there.
Yeah.
And they kill people on a daily basis. It's not like a great white shark or a giant crocodile where they'll eat a wildebeest or they'll eat a giant elephant seal, and then they don't have to eat again for a month or 2 months, or they're not wild animals like that. They feed daily.
Yeah.
And we get like a little bit of Armand's ritual to like change things up, where apparently he puts out Craigslist ads basically saying, I'm going to hunt you for real. If you can make it here without me catching you, I'll give you millions of dollars. And he gets people to sign up to basically become his dinner.
Right.
Yeah, The Most Dangerous Game, which I think it was called Surviving the Game, which was a great movie with Ice-T and Rutger Hauer, and it had a great cast. Charles Dutton. Basically, it's a version of Most Dangerous Game. That's what that reminded me of. But and Armand has become a character that I didn't know that I need. Like, I think you said it, where it's like last season ended, and this guy who's kind of been there in the periphery, not the peripheral, that was a show we covered, periphery, he reveals himself to be the vampire Armand. And there's part of you that's like, okay, was this done because it's like I know that name from the movie, or I know that name from the books, or did they actually have like a plan for him? And now I can't picture the show without him.
Exactly.
I think I'll say it live on YouTube. I think I'm Assad Zaman.
Yeah.
I think he's the MVP of this season.
Yeah.
I think he's deserving of an Emmy nomination this season. Ben Daniels as Santiago is somebody who's fucking great, but he's a, very much a side character. Armand has become because Lestat is effectively not in this season outside of a few moments. He is the second main character.
Yeah.
And his presence, we talked about it last week because you saw a little bit of like those sharp edits of him with his glowing orange eyes. And he's such like he doesn't look like the type of person who can be scary.
Mm-hmm.
Like the actor, Asad Zaman does not look like the type of person who can be scary, but he is terrifying in this.
Yes, he sure is.
Yeah.
It's funny because you and I have had this conversation, and then Sherry and I seem to have this conversation every single week where it's like, oh, Armand is scary. Oh, Armand is this mastermind. He's doing this. And I keep thinking about how kind of pathetic Armand is too. He is the rebound for Louis, like after Lestat, it's like he's got Armand. And Sherry and I had this whole big deep conversation about toxic relationships and people being with people that don't love them and sort of kind of putting up with abuse, but then also doing horrible things to them too. And I feel like that this episode embodies that. I mean, there is a man, literally Daniel, who is tortured in this episode with supernatural powers. With supernatural powers, he's tortured, but that just kind of takes a backstage to this lovers' quarrel. These two guys, just having emotional problems. It's so funny because you have that toxic relationship, but then you have a person who can literally control how people think. He can read your minds. He can like telekinetically move things. He can set things on fire, and you have them just like totally emotionally shattered. It's a very hard episode to watch.
I really was fascinated by that dichotomy of Armand being the powerful one in terms of powers, but really he is pathetic when it comes to Louis, because and this goes back an episode or two now where he tries to like define their relationship 100 years ago in France, and Louis is like, we're not a couple, we're just, I'm not your companion, we're just we're just having fun, this is what it is. Fun.
Yeah.
And it's exactly where like you could tell how hurt Armand was when he reads through or he listens to all the tapes and he's like, it's Lestat this, Lestat that. And it's funny because if this show is this season is kind of making you forget that Lestat wasn't exactly the best romantic partner either.
No, he's horrible. Yeah.
But the power dynamic was he was Louis's maker and Louis loves him and would always be there for him until he had Claudia there to kind of act as a break where like that's what led to them, with the attempted murder. Whereas Armand is the fact that he fills up, 2 days of tapes on Lestat. The fact that he basically walked into the sun to burn himself alive so that he can get out of a relationship. Like that's
yeah.
Like that's like, if you're trapped in an unhappy marriage and you kill yourself instead of getting a divorce, or if you're not even, if you're not even married, you have a toxic relationship, like you said, and you can't break it off, so you kill yourself. It's that what Louis must be feeling, how much Louis
Yeah.
must resent Armand at this point
Right.
is just. And then, of course, there's the other side of it, which is in the relationship aspect, Louis has all the power, and Armand is this like pathetic, love me like you do Lestat. But then in reality, he is a more powerful vampire than Louis, and
Mm-hmm.
he uses those powers to basically uh, wipe their minds of 40 years of history. It's
Yes.
even to the point where Louis had basically chosen Daniel over Armand.
Sort of,
And
yeah.
and Daniel was willing. It certainly seemed like Daniel was there for more than just recording an interview. And I love the interactions between Jacob Anderson and Eric Bogosian, where he
Yeah.
like, so, did we? We
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. Okay, just checking. uh,
Yeah. I mean, when you think about Louis and Armand, like there's this point where Louis just goes off on him, and he's talking about how boring he is, and I can't remember what he says. He says this one line that like Sherry and I just like laughed at, where he's like, "This super powerful vanilla or like white pillow or something like that." He calls him like a pillow or something like that, and it's just because Armand is so wanting of Louis's love, and he's so wanting someone to give him that love. That's what happens in real life relationships. That's why this show is kind of amazing, is because it really is like a mirror up to just our human interactions and stuff like that. And some of the interactions between these mythical characters are more realistic than on regular dramas. Like there's absolutely relationships where one person just wants love from another person, and they'll give them so much love. They'll be so kind to them, and the other person's never going to give it to them. They're never going to give them exactly what they want.
I also think that in many of those cases, whether it's the show or real life, it's not even love. It's just you have this idea of like you're together with somebody for so long that you're scared of being alone.
Yeah, codependency.
Yeah. And like Athena and I joke around.
Uh-oh.
And, like we're like, yeah, our marriage is like 70-80% good to only 20-30%, not great.
Well,
But
congratulations.
the thing, but like we'll joke around and say like, oh, the thing that's keeping us together more than anything else is, oh God, I don't want to be single right now. Like, and like I have single friends who are miserable, but then I also have single friends but then I also have married friends who do nothing but, or friends who are in relationships who only complain about their significant others. And when you say, well, why don't you, break up? They're like, So
everyone's miserable everywhere.
Yeah. I feel like that's the beauty is, who can you be miserable with and tolerate each other?
And that's what's a big thing of this show. That's a big part of the show. And that was certainly a big part of this episode. The reason why we know that Daniel has significance for Louis is because Louis tells Daniel that he's brought 5 guys there to that apartment that they're in, where this interview is taking place. But then you find out that he's brought like 250 guys or something like that. It might even be like 500. It's some kind of crazy ass number. But it's like he always has sex with them, and then he murders them, right? Typical vampire style. But then Daniel is the one. He's the diamond in the rough, the exception, where he doesn't end his life. And that's what is so intriguing to Armand. And Armand essentially he takes out his anger at Louis and his anger at himself on Daniel.
What's the line that Daniel had written in the notebook where he's like, and that's why I let you live. And he's like, why did you let me live? Like, what was it that made you keep me alive? Like, because from what we know about those two characters, Daniel should have died. Like, he was bitten.
Yeah.
He got.
He's bitten twice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in this episode they kind of established why they let him live, right? Because essentially, like, his life, his survival was almost like a gift that Armand had to give to Louis, or you know, like they kind of had to do it for each other to kind of keep their relationship going. He's like, you could kill him, but by keeping him alive, that's showing that you love me. It's a weird thing. They're using a human life to do that. And that's kind of the way the show works, right? Humans are just like disposable. We're just like fucking chicken cutlets in the grocery store to them. And, you know, they're having all these emotional things. And it's just like, you know, you're getting into an argument with your wife and you're like, listen, if I can buy this ice cream and keep it in my freezer, we're not going to get a divorce. That's basically what Daniel was. He's like, don't kill him.
I'm going to take this chicken cutlet to a hotel, fuck it, kill it, and then I'm going to...
You know, it's so funny because we're like all over the map. We're talking about all different parts of the episode, but it is a really, really well-made show. And
this episode, more than any other, felt, and this is, you know, from having a show with me for years, I'm a my biggest, one of my favorite things in any medium of whether it's horror or anything else, compelling dialogue to me is just the best. I think about all the movies that I love. The parts of Jaws that are the best are not the shark parts. It's the interactions between the three guys on the boat. I grew up a Tarantino, Kevin Smith junkie. So I grew up with like long monologues and dialogue all over the place. And when I watch something and my first reaction is I would pay to see this as a stage play.
Yep.
That to me is like one of like the highest forms of praise I can give an episode of television or a movie, where it's like, that was a great movie, but man, I would pay to watch these actors live in front of me. And this episode, where it's two scenes. It's Louis and Daniel talking in the present.
Yes.
And then it's Louis and young Daniel, and then Armand coming in the past. And like, I'm envisioning this as like a stage and half. And, you know, the same actor who plays Louis walking out of a door and going into 1973 and then walking out of that door again. And he walks back into the present.
Yeah.
And I just love episodes like this where everything feels like it's just, you stop thinking that these are actors and you're just loving the characters that they're playing and the beats that these characters are, you know, playing off of each other.
Yes. But unfortunately, the play would not have commercials for Burger King jarringly thrown in.
That's a good point.
What it would have as a play, though, is something that they incorporated last night, where there were like single piano notes. There were like these piano notes that would trigger every time a person would have that kind of reaction where they're like, wait a minute, I'm remembering this. Wait a minute, like, I forgot this. That happened multiple times this episode, and every time there was this like single piano note, it'd be like dong, dong. It's kind of like we're getting a revelation that, like, I mentioned last time around, that like fire and water were kind of used symbolically to kind of show what was going on with the characters. This was all about those piano notes. They did this like at least 3 times last night, where it'd be like dong, and it would be like Louis realizing that part of his memory is erased. Daniel, like, realizing this is what I've been thinking about. I've been getting these little glimpses of this, and now I'm finally understanding what the full picture is. And the part that I'm talking about that almost made me cry was when Louis realizes that he went to kill himself. You know, it's done so well, where you know, Daniel is actually playing the recording of the apartment sequence, and like Louis goes to go kill him. Armand stops him. They fight. You hear the whole thing. It says it's on a recording, and then there's a door closes. You hear Louis going up the steps, and then a door closes again, and it's him going to kill himself on the roof. And that scene, that was so well done, and it even looked beautiful as he was kind of killing himself. You know, it wasn't just like he was set on fire and he started like turn black and stuff. It was like kind of like a whirlwind where like he was like almost like sand getting brushed away in the wind. And I just, with his performance and the way that whole scene went together, it was, I almost cried, man. It was strong.
I love the companion revelation to that, where at the end, Daniel comes back with a line out of his book.
Yep.
And he wrote in his book that a guy who they drop him off at a drug den, and a guy obviously self-immolated in the drug den. And he says that this guy told him something and then burned himself alive. And he realizes that Louis, that he conflated two events. He says, I think that exact line, I conflated these two things, because Louis, who is walking burnt to a corpse, whispers to Daniel that he has to keep going and keep being a reporter no matter what, that it's like his destiny. And he says, like, I failed 2 marriages, I failed 2 daughters, but I've never stopped being a reporter because of what that guy in the drug den who burnt himself alive told to me. And then he realizes that was Louis.
Yeah.
And both of them coming to the realization that Armand has been like effectively playing them and lying to them, to the point where they catch Armand at the end repeating like the same thing that he tells him, oh, I do, anything to make you happy. And like Louis quotes it as he's saying it word for word to like,
yep.
Here's my question. You're more versed in the books than I am. Obviously, yeah. I've not read any of them. I know there's a Vampire Armand book.
Yeah.
Have you read that one?
No.
Okay, because I'm curious if Louis and Lestat are in that book. Mm-hmm. The way I envision that this season ends is Lestat making a grand return and killing Armand, especially after what we saw in this episode, where in 1973, Armand psychically reaches out to Lestat just to prove to Louis that he's still alive.
Yeah.
And he won't tell Lestat where Louis is, and he won't let Louis respond back to Lestat.
Yeah.
And then he kind of, I'm assuming he then blocks that memory out. So, like, I don't know. It just feels like these 3 vampires who have not ever shared a screen together in the corporeal form. I think the only time they were on screen together is Louis and Armand, and then Lestat as a figment of Louis's imagination.
Correct.
So we've never had these 3 vampires on screen together, and it has to happen at some point. Like, mm-hmm. So I'm just, how are they going? Because it feels like, we're talking about how Armand is this pathetic vampire who just wants Louis to love him. Right. How is he gonna react when Louis' true love comes back?
Yes. Well, I mean, we need to kind of go through the stuff that is going to happen in France. And I mean, obviously, even though Louis and Daniel are on to Armand, like the interview is going to continue, right? Because they're going to have to show the stuff that happens in France. And so, like, I think that kind of stuff has to kind of get resolved before we get a like Armand Lestat Louis like
Showdown
battle or something. Showdown. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But it's funny, right? Because we didn't even see Lestat at all in this episode. We just heard his voice, right? And I think Lestat's been in every single episode except for this one, and then we just hear his voice. And he's so sad too. He sounds weakened, right? Like when he's talking, and it's like, Louis, why did you hurt yourself? And he's like, say I love you. And I just felt bad for Lestat of all people. But yeah, I do think that we are going to see the three of them interact, but I think they have to resolve the French stuff first, you know?
Yeah, and that the little like preview of next week seems like we're not only are we going back to France, but it seems like there's almost like a revolution going on, which it's not the French Revolution. We're hundreds of years in front of that now, but it's post World War II. Maybe like, expelling the Germans from Paris, or I don't really know my French history well enough to know why there's violence in the streets in 1940s France other than World War II. So we're going to see some type of return to Paris next week, and I'm looking forward to that because I'm dying to get to that eventual endpoint that we know is coming in Paris with Claudia, with Louis most likely getting some kind of crazy revenge, which is another thing that I'm looking forward to is what happens with Armand and Louis after that. Because in the movie, basically Antonio Banderas like walks Brad Pitt to a carriage and he's like, we should be together. We should stay together. And Louis is like, I have to go. And that's it. And then like Armand is just like, oh, I will blow out this candle with my sexy Spanish accent. And that's it. And so obviously Armand is going to somehow maybe erase the memory of what happens, maybe change the memories a little bit so that Louis doesn't really know what happened or doesn't realize what happened or doesn't know that Armand was part of it, which is more likely the case, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just looking forward. Every episode has been spectacular. We come on here every Monday or Tuesday and we just wax poetic for 30 to 60 minutes on these episodes, reveling in the great acting and writing, and it's just, take me to next Monday.
Yeah. Well, there's only 3 episodes left too, right? For this season. Yeah. So I think, and in the trailers, it looks like they move forward with stuff that happens with Claudia next week too, so, but I just like two things I wanted to bring up real quick before we wrap it up. I really like how powerful Armand is, and I'm always a fan of like things happening simultaneously while they're having conversations. Like Armand's talking to Daniel about the people that he's interviewed. He's talking to Daniel in 1973. And at one point he's like physically pulling the tape out of a cassette that Daniel has recorded an interview on, but then he's also telekinetically making the tape come out of the other cassettes too. So he's ruining all these interviews that Daniel got too, which I think is like messed up. He uses rest on like everybody. He uses rest multiple times on Daniel. At one point he makes Daniel like be in a sitting position, even though there's no chair. And
the Roman chair. So I was on the wrestling team in high school for 4 years. And typically that's an exercise you do to strengthen your legs where you sit up against a wall and you just sit as if you're in a chair with your back to a wall, and you start to feel like burning in your like hamstrings and your calves so fast, and your quadriceps and your hamstrings so quickly. And then like what we would do is we would have guys on the team would like stand on your legs to like make the pressure like go down, and you just be like, and it was like a contest who could last the longest in the Roman chair.
Jesus.
And this is Daniel in the middle of a room with no wall behind him to take any of the weight off. And I just had flashbacks to like the pain of like being 2.5 hours into a wrestling practice and having to do Roman chair and being like, ah.
Yeah. He was tortured for days. He was tortured for days. And, I think we kind of talked about this a bit, but like really when Louis and Armand go at each other and they're just like ripping into each other verbally, it is a thing of beauty. Like Louis just goes off on how boring he is and how boring their life has become. And Armand just goes off about how like Lestat and Claudia did not love him. And that's ultimately what makes Louis go up to the roof, is he thinks that Claudia did not love him. So we'll see how things go with Claudia in the next episode. Is there anything else that you want to talk about with this episode?
I mean, so much happens while so much is not happening at all, because it's really just the two characters. It's Daniel and Louis talking, and then it's Daniel and Louis talking, and then Armand is there and he's talking to them, and that's really it. It's brilliant in its simplicity. And like next week, it looks like there's going to be a lot of stuff happening.
Right.
So I'm excited for that. But this was like a perfect middle of a season episode where a lot of times, and I think we've covered shows where we've kind of felt where in like 8 to 10 episode seasons, episode 5 is usually a good place to throw in a throwaway episode. Yeah. Where, it's like, all right, well, we want to save all the good stuff for the last couple of episodes. So we just got to get through episodes 5 and 6 or 7, 6 and 7 before we get up to those big ones at the end.
Right.
I felt that way with the last season of Yellow Jackets, where it felt like there was a lot of dead space where so many things we wanted to see. And we were like, they didn't cover any of that stuff. They didn't show any of that stuff. We're like, why are we talking about like this guy that gets murdered? Like nobody cares about him.
Right.
This episode 5 of 8, it gives you big reveals. It gives you big character motivations. It gives you good character plot devices. And it really does set you up for anything and everything that is going to happen in these next 3 episodes, both in the past and in the present.
Yep.
So for an episode 5 of 8, this is particularly great.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad that we decided to cover this show during last season. And so, it's a hell of a ride. If you guys have not subscribed, please do join us at the Last Cast. We want to hear what you thought about this episode too. We're really loving your comments. Danny, besides Interview with the Vampire, though, what else do we got going on?
Oh, it took me a minute because I always get so into this show. We just started the M Nights of Summer. We are covering films from the Shyamalan family. We have a review up of The Watchers, which is currently in theaters now. Go see that. That was directed by Ashana Shyamalan, M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. And we're going to be covering a different M. Night Shyamalan film every week, I believe through the month of July, through the rest of June and July, until we get to early August. And that is when Trap comes out, which is the new M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah.
But there's so much cool stuff that is coming. I'm so excited about July 5th, Maxine. I've seen that trailer. Animotion Obsession is one of like my favorite 80s songs, and that trailer is just amazing. I cannot wait for that. We covered all of Ty West's movies with our Ty West retrospective a couple of months ago, so I'm super excited about that. Longlegs is coming out soon, which is getting some insane reviews. There were Coralie Fargeau's new movie with Demi Moore, which like did amazing at Cannes, is coming. It's like a new body horror movie.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my God, I forgot the name of it, but it's like there's so much great horror yet to come. Stop Motion is on Shudder. If you haven't seen that, you should check that out because that was one of my favorite horror films of the year. But in terms of the Lasercast, we have the M Nights of Summer and Interview with a Vampire every Monday or Tuesday, depending on what our schedule is. Next episode Sunday night on AMC.
Hell yeah. So yeah, make sure you guys are with us for our next review, and we will see you guys real soon.